So this is pretty exciting. I have around 10 minutes. When we sat down, all the rest of us who were putting this program together, and thought 10 minutes, what are we going to do in 10 minutes? The only thing that's going to be possible in 10 minutes is give you a flavor and it'll give you some thought-provoking moments, maybe. So, as Senja says, I'm proud to be the designer, the chief designer for healthcare, welfare and education, so I work a lot with public sector customers. But if we're going to talk about designing for empowerment, then it's not just with public customers, it's actually with citizens that we need to focus on. So in the next 10 minutes I'm going to give you some thoughts about what design could do and the limits of design, which is actually really important. So first I'm going to ask, is there anybody here from Ireland? No? Excellent. Then I can just make stuff up. So in 10 minutes I'm going to actually talk about Sligo Rovers Football Club. Woo. And I'm going to talk about the transatlantic slave trade, and I'm going to actually link the two of them together and relate them to MyData and empowerment, somehow. So, I'll tell you a story first. You are in London, and you're at the Tate Gallery, and you're a big fan of Mondrian, so you're at the Tate and you're having a fantastic time looking at the paintings, and then you figure you'll go to Soho. You walk around Soho and you get thirsty, so you want to have a cup of coffee. And you think, I'm going to find a coffee place with the free Wi-Fi, because I want to check my football scores. And as you're in the coffee shop waiting for your latte, you put in your name, email address, nationality on the portal page for the Wi-Fi, you sign up to some terms and conditions, and then you enjoy Sligo Rovers beating Shamrock Rovers 1-0. But how many of you think about what happens with this data here? Yeah, this is the tough crowd to see. You're all coming to this conference, so you all know this stuff. And the truth is, in this scenario here, this coffee shop has hired a company called Coffee Wi-Fi to provide them Wi-Fi, and Coffee Wi-Fi have bought a product called BizConnect from some faceless corporation. And at what point did you give consent to Faceless Corporation to take your data? Where is the data now? Who's responsible for it? And were you empowered in that experience, in that everyday experience there, were you empowered to make a conscious decision about what happens with your data? Now, as I said, this crowd here is a little bit special because you're coming to this conference, so you are concerned about this. But the truth is that the majority of people are like Hansel and Gretel. And they go along in their internet experience, leaving little breadcrumbs of data behind them, and they don't care. So before you can start talking about empowering people, you have to get over two other problems. And one of them is ignorance, and the other one is apathy. So people don't know that it's a problem, and if they do know, the majority don't care. So those two issues I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on. Because we can make design the question is, can we make design to help people understand? So can we use design to help people get over ignorance? And can we use design to help people care? And the big question is, can you use design for behavioral change to affect a paradigm shift? And a paradigm shift is not a small thing. There was a mention of it in the keynotes this morning. For this movement to gain any traction, there needs to be a big paradigm shift, not just the people who come to this conference. That's a tiny proportion of people. There needs to be a general paradigm shift. So let's look at different examples of paradigm shifts and see what we can learn. 300 years ago, if you were walking around in London and you were well-to-do and you had some money in your pocket, you could go into an investment broker and invest in a slave ship. You could put money into a slave ship. And 300 years ago, that was not a problem. You could go to your club afterwards and sit down and have some brandies, and your mates in the club would say, that's a fantastic investment. There's really good money in slaves. That was perfectly acceptable. There was a couple of objectors, but then quite quickly, by 1807, the British Parliament decided that they no longer wanted to be involved in slave trade. And very quickly after that, there was a paradigm shift. such that 300 years later, it's complete anathema. To trade in slavery is completely unacceptable. So within 300 years, there's a paradigm shift here. And you can say the same thing happened for universal suffrage, at least in European countries, in and around 1920, plus or minus a couple of years. It was just decided that, yeah, probably women should be allowed to vote also. And you can say the same about the ecology and the green movement. I mean, in the 1940s, 1950s, were pretty unusual to care about the rainforests. And now it's quite usual to talk about organic and ecological and socially responsible produce. And the same we can talk about anti-smoking. So you can ask yourself, what caused these shifts? What caused these paradigm shifts from something that's perfectly reasonable to something that's no longer reasonable? Because that's exactly the same problem with your personal data. The majority of people don't see it's a problem and don't care. And we need to get to a stage where the majority of people do care. So you can say that it's based on two things, and it depends how positive or negative you are as a person. You say either we just suddenly became more enlightened as a population, and we suddenly decided, we woke up one morning and we said, slavery is actually pretty bad, we should stop doing it. Or there was some monetary factor. It's not a coincidence that at the same time as the slave trade declined, the Industrial Revolution was happening. So if you're going to invest in a big machine or invest in human labor, the human labor was actually a little bit more risky because of the revolts that were going on. So there was a money factor involved also. The same is true about the ecology movement. So from a pessimistic point of view, you can say, okay, to convince the majority of people to concern themselves with personal data, you need to give some sort of a monetary incentive. There needs to be some tokenization of your data. There needs to be some hard facts related to money, why people would concern themselves. The closest we have right now are things like identity theft, which hits people really hard, and cyber attacks using the vector of phishing, where they pick up the breadcrumb trails, what you're leaving online, and use that as an attack vector. So how does design fit in all this? Well, as I said, it's a little bit about the limits of design also. So you need to understand the things that design can help and the things that design can't help with. In terms of the things design can help with, all design is political. You're changing the behavior of people. And you need to focus on everyday scenarios. As I said, I work in the public sector and we work with like government IT systems. And convincing government ITs to be more responsible with their data is fairly easy because of GDPR. But convincing normal people when they go to a Soho coffee shop to be more responsible with their data is not so easy. So, how would that scenario that I said earlier look different? Well, first of all, if there was some sort of recognized, respected symbol that people recognized when they went into that coffee shop, and saw that yes, this coffee shop does handle my personal data in a responsible, ethical way. So you can, examples are like the fair trade symbol and the little cookie symbol that's gaining traction now. And if there is eventually an ethical use of personal data symbol, not many of them, but one of them, that would be a big bonus. So you can make a conscious decision as a citizen. The second thing is to, of course, be human. Talk about the consequences of what happens when you give up your personal data and what it's going to be used for, and in human terms, not in terms and conditions. That's a legal speak. Be very transparent. Anytime you're going to store the personal data longer than the person finishes their cafe latte, you need to be very transparent and actually tell them that. And lastly, please don't nag people. Most people will not care, ever. And that's a fact that we're going to have to accept. So, very shortly, in conclusion, empowering people through design, that needs to happen after you get over the ignorance and apathy. You need to look for the monetary trigger that's going to affect a paradigm shift. And you need to design services, everyday services around that. and all design is political. Thanks very much. Did I finish in 10 minutes?
Yes, you have.